Going live. We are live. All right, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. Good. Hey, everybody. I see y'all popping up. Um, so what's been happening? Has anything been going on in Saints Land for the past week?
Why is it that this time of the year is so quiet?
I tell you what. I think it was either Boat Lawyer or Little Mitch over there on Twitter said he really hates the off season. He really, really does, because there's never good news in the off season. We lost.
This off season feels like it has lasted for 10 years.
Yes, it has. It does feel like
usually guys like us that really kind of live this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We have the distraction of Major League Baseball, if that's your thing, or NBA, or NASCAR, or all this other stuff that you fill your off season with and be a part of. And the lack of that, not to mention college athletics, but the lack of that has made this seem such a prolonged process. And that's kind of ironic, because the only one that is keeping to their off-season timetable has been the NFL, with the NFL draft. And
well, this weekend was Cristobal, the tropical storm, and if my calendar was right, I think this past weekend in a normal off season should have been the end of OTAs and the mini camp, the last full team mini camp, because it was the second weekend of June. So I want to say that's probably about when it ends. So yeah, that's what makes it even worse, because we're not having the OTAs. We're not hearing about, the whole team has gotten together for mini camp, and we got to see footage of the new players, Brees throwing passes to Emmanuel Sanders in shorts and shells. We're not seeing all that stuff, so it feels like what would be going on right now until the end of July, that long period of no discussion about sports, no discussion about football. And that's probably the most frustrating thing. I mean, the Noah Spence ripped his ACL, tore his ACL at a home workout, and that would have been something we probably would have seen in an OTA. That's about the sum total of Saints football news. As I told you guys last week, and Sean and I were talking about this off the air, we're not going to address all the controversies involving Drew Brees and what he said about the flag and protesting, and what Malcolm Jenkins said in response, and all that stuff, because it's a no-win. And we really need to put this behind us, okay? Everybody. Not the issues that were being addressed, especially by players like Malcolm Jenkins and Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, about racial injustice. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is there's nothing good is going to come out of just rehashing over and over what Drew said, defending what Drew said, attacking what Drew said. And the same for Malcolm Jenkins. We need to let that part of the story go.
Yeah, and there needs to be a healing process that takes place.
Yes.
Or else we just need to mail this season in, because there's no way that this team is going to win divided. It just ain't going to happen.
No, and that's probably what upset me the most, was that Peyton and Brees have spent so much time assembling a roster that seemed so close. And we heard this from free agents. They came to New Orleans because they loved this locker room. When DJ Swearinger re-signed with the Saints, he said, I've never been in a locker room like this. Okay. And that to me is one of the most important things um, about this team, and why I think that yes, we've had 3 consecutive playoff losses, 3 upsetting playoff losses. How do you get over that? You get over it with a tight locker room that knows we can do it again. We can get past that hump. We can win 13 games and win the division again. But this past week, for the first time, I really felt like maybe we can't. So
Well,
until we
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, I was just saying until we get past that, I don't know if we can, and that's upsetting.
That was the most disparaging part of it to me, was sitting there knowing the narrative that you just alluded to about how the Saints are well known for their closeness in the locker room and the closeness of those players, and how Peyton and Loomis have meticulously chosen maybe not the best players, but the right players for that, the right players to establish that in this locker room. And for the first time in a long, long time, I sit and watched everything play out this week and thought to myself, well, it's fallen apart.
Well, but the good news is, from what Nick Underhill reported and so forth, not only was Drew's apology sincere, but the team, Demario Davis immediately came out and said, "This is what a leader looks like." Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas immediately came out and said, "It's over. We accepted his apology. We understood." And I think that's the part I want to get out of this, is the part that this team they are close enough to have a family squabble, and then it's over with. We can get back together. And that's what I want to see out of this. And I think us not seeing football, not seeing OTAs, not seeing practices, that's why you get that feeling of, man, this is such a long off season. I want to see the body language. I want to see them embracing each other as they did or as they do during the regular season.
Yeah. I want to see this team come back together and play like they've played for the last 3 seasons, and get over that hump and win that Super Bowl, and see Drew ride off into the sunset with his 2 Super Bowl MVP trophies and all that sort of stuff. I think that there was a lot of, and this is all I'm going to say about this, I think that there was a lot of noise from the outside that affected the perspective of what this looked like. And I think that that's both sad and unfortunate. But at the same time, it's a sign of these times. It really is. The world that you and I grew up in is no more. And the values that we were raised with and that we were taught are not the same as what people have today.
Well, I don't know about that, because I've felt that, the world I grew up in has been gone for a long, long time, long before this. Just because of technology alone. One of the things I've noticed through this whole quarantine is kids riding bikes again. And me, I lived on my bike. I would disappear for hours on my bike, just riding through neighborhoods and just be gone. And there wasn't much traffic because I happened to live in a suburb that was very small, only 13 miles, and sparsely populated, and very few people drove through this area. So it was a small town outside of New Orleans, essentially, but we weren't a town. It was just this little pocket right there along Jefferson Highway that people just didn't know about. When I was in high school and I got a ride home, people would come out there and I didn't even know this even existed out here. And so that all changed, and it changed as I was growing up. I could see it, and the houses, this area was called little farms at one point because it was literally little farms everywhere. I grew up with a horse pasture behind me. There was a rooster I thought was blind that crowed all day long. I mean, it was not uncommon to see people walking horses to the levee, people on horseback. It just, there were these acre and a half lots with these little houses on them. We played football in empty fields and things like that. And you know that all changed in the 90s, when people got tired of driving across the North Shore to work back in the city and discovered River Ridge and started building houses, knocking these little houses down that people lived in and building a McMansion or cutting subdivisions through there. So yeah, all that's changed. I mean, we had one street light or two street lights. Sorry, we had two street lights and they shut off at 10 o'clock. Turned to caution lights in the 60s and the 70s. So, I mean, that's just the way it was.
Man, I grew up in an area, Crowville, where I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
There was one caution light, one post office, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 churches. I think 2 fuel stations, one grocery store, one hardware store, and one general store.
Yeah.
A population of about 500 and something, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it was
on Friday evenings. You get off of school, you grab your backpack, your tent, and all the various and sundry items,
mm-hmm.
and you hit back into the pasture back there and you camp out. Of course, I was camping with my older brother and his best friend, which was not necessarily a good thing for me, but lots of memories.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. There were woods where I lived. Now, a lot of the woods had been clear cut, sorry, by the time I became older, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. A lot of the woods were gone, but there were woods where around, off of Jefferson Highway, off of the main thoroughfares in this little area. And my dad would tell me when he was a kid, he would go hunting, and hunting for deer, hunting for rabbits, things like that, where I went to school and where I lived, and it just, that's just the way it was. My brother was on here a little bit ago. He could tell you the stories about the horse pasture behind us. My mom would buy a whole bunch of carrots, and she'd go, I just bought carrots. What happened to them all? I don't know. But we would go over the fence and feed the horses the carrots, because they would come up to the fence and knock on we had a wooden fence, but they would knock on the fence. You could hear them, and they're looking for food. So we're giving them carrots and stuff, and that's just the way it was. And I grew up in a neighborhood that everybody's dad went to work and everybody's mom stayed home. And we had one divorcee in the neighborhood, and that was not a controversy. I don't want to make it sound like that, but it was unusual.
Yes.
And I'm not passing judgment on anybody, obviously, but it was just something that was unusual back then. So, was this, you compare that to other people's lives, it's very different than any other experience they've ever had. And yeah, it shaped me. It shaped my outlook, and it was part of the reason why I live here today, and wanted my kids to grow up here, because I felt like this was a safe area that they could grow up and not have to worry about them. They could go ride their bikes and disappear for a few hours, and I'm not I'm not the helicopter parent going, Karen on the phone. Where's my kid? Where's my kid? And it's obviously the generational difference, but it's still, there's enough around here that are still people that I grew up with that live out here that keep those same kind of values. So, but we're kind of going way off target here. But it's good. I mean, I'm seeing the comments.
That's so unusual for us.
Well, I'm seeing the comments. Calvin says sounds like Caldwell Parish, and
no, there's nothing that sounds like Caldwell Parish.
And Chad says, so you lived in Maine? No, you lived in Port Shan. You lived in Cutoff.
The only thing that sounds like Caldwell Parish is Green Acres.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. It was different. It really was. And I got a big kick out of my youngest one got to go to the same grade school I went to, for different reasons. But and one day she went in the library and found a book, that still has, by that time they were using, computers to computer barcodes to check books out. But of course, in the old days when the world was still black and white and color didn't come in. Card. Yeah, you had to sign. You signed the card on the thing. So I had, my name, my grade, or room number on the card, and she picked out one of the books, and the card was still in the book, in the back of the book, and it still had my name on it. So I said, let me guess, it was a Hardy Boys book. She's like, yeah, it was. I'm like, oh yeah, my name's on every single one of them. I read every one of them. So yeah, absolutely. But I'm
watching The Greatest Show these days, man. And last off topic.
Okay.
Dexter.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that?
I know what Dexter is. It's not a show I would watch, but I know what it is. Okay. The serial killer.
Yeah.
But he's also he's a forensic scientist, so it makes him
police department.
Right. So it makes him even more dangerous. Yeah. Because he knows how to cover up his own crime. I actually knew a forensic scientist, and he told me one time, he says, man, I'm not trying to scare you, but I could kill you, and the police would never be able to solve your murder. They'd never find your body. I'm like, that's good to know. Yeah. Glad you're on this side of me, the good side of me. I'm not on the bad side of you, but yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
those are the kind of people you kind of want to.
Well, you always stay, you stay on the good side of those people. You don't insult them at all. But the other, moving on to a more serious topic here, the thing, and Anna said she was hurt about what happened with Drew. The thing, and this is more of a comment about social media in general and why the times today are not like the times from when you and I were growing up. What bothers me the most is the cancer. I knew I was going to say that. The cancel culture of today. Whereas if you say something that social media or conventional wisdom, as we used to call it, finds to be wrong, they now, through social media, have the power to shame, embarrass, dox you, if that's the right term, and basically destroy your life. And that is more frightening than anything else, because there's two issues that bother me about that. Number one, that you're guilty of thought crimes, a la 1984. And number two, that said person guilty of a thought crime is irredeemable. When we talk about Drew's teammates forgave him and they understood him. And the reason why, aside from the fact of his credentials as a football player, his personal credentials, he has shown the ability to listen, understand what others are saying, be empathetic, and have this dialogue, this conversation. What we're seeing with people today is this unwillingness to have a conversation. I post this all the time because it was such a great scene from the pilot episode of Star Trek. And I'm talking about the pilot with Christopher Pike as the captain, not James T. Kirk, where he is in the cage, the cell, and he is trying to fill his mind full of hate and anger because the Telosians could not read through that screen. Well, the Telosian being, which is they got a huge head, bald head, they're telepathic. They had the ability to reach into his mind and project images and so forth, send a thought process or a thought bolt, essentially, to Pike. And it's like a migraine headache. He's like, oh my God, and then he grabs his head. And as he's trying to recover, the Telosian tells him, wrong thinking is punishable. Right thinking will be quickly rewarded. And when I heard that, I said, my God, that is so Orwellian. And here today, we are seeing social media act as a Telosian, the being with the big head, and we're all Christopher Pike. Wrong thinking is punishable. And that's terrifying. You cannot have a free society if wrong thinking is punishable. We're not willing to have this conversation.
It's become acceptable that if people don't agree with you, then they're your enemy, rather than just someone that thinks differently from you. We're taught nowadays that if you don't share the same opinion about something that I do, then you're wrong, period. There's no room for exchange of thoughts and ideas. You're wrong, and I'm offended by that. And that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and that is contrary to what the whole idea of a free and open society should be about, because we have to have the ability to have a conversation, because we have to have the ability to become understanding of each other, understand where the other person is coming from. And it's not a one-sided lecture. It has to be a give and take, or exchange of ideas. Because if it's not that, then all it is a quest for power. And I'm bringing this up because it makes this book here, let me move it over here if you can see it, Arthur Miller's The Crucible, okay? This is about the Salem witch trials, and he wrote this, it's a play, okay? And he wrote this play after witnessing the McCarthy hearings in the 1950s. And for those who went to a less than satisfactory public school, basically Joseph McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I want to say it's Wisconsin. Anyway, this was the communist witch hunt. It was a communist in Hollywood. They're communists in business. They're communists in the military. Communists in the government. And he was determined to root them all out. And if you associated with people who were of questionable loyalty, you were branded a communist too. And
your life was ruined.
And your life was ruined.
Your career was ruined.
And that happened in Hollywood. You were on a blacklist. And Ronald Reagan in the 50s spoke out against this, because back then he was a Democrat and he spoke out against this stuff. And that's what Arthur Miller took the Salem witch trials as a parallel or a parable of what was going on in the government at that time. Well, we're kind of seeing that today. Okay, my brother confirmed it was Wisconsin. Yeah, see, I haven't lost it all. I still have some of it still left up here, the useless trivia in my mind. But anyway, he
And see, all that time that you were so mean to Danny, and he comes through in a pinch for you.
yeah, he does. He does. I have to give him that. I have to give him that. But anyway, so um, the Crucible basically is a Salem witch trial, and as you, what first started out being, these girls get caught doing things they really shouldn't have been doing. This is Puritan society, so they're dancing, not wearing. They suggest that they were
Naked.
naked. They suggest they're naked. In fact, I think they even said they're naked. But this is also Puritan society. You're considered naked if you're not wearing, the head to toe clothing. If you've got anything exposed, you're naked. So that's how I always taught it, because if you're teaching high school kids, it's like Beavis and Butthead times 32. He said naked. So I mean,
Ah. Man, I had to sit through a sex education class with a woman teacher.
really,
Yeah, and
really.
the class was about three-quarter guys.
Yeah, I had to sit through a sex education class that was a lot like the Wonder Years episode, where the guy's trying to teach them sex education and he draws basically a cow's head on the board, and that was supposed to be a uterus and the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. So yeah,
I always loved Mama's Family with Valerie Harper.
uh-huh.
Wasn't it Valerie Harper from
No,
the
it was not
Carol?
Valerie Harper. No,
No, no, no.
that was Carol's twin. She sang the night they it was Vicki Lawrence.
Vicki Lawrence, yes.
And she sang
Vicki
the
Lawrence
song.
played Mama, and
Yes, because it was the old routine from Carol Burnett show with Mama and Eunice. Yeah, and Vicki Lawrence had a hit called "The Night." God,
the night they burned down.
No,
the night they burned down Georgia.
Is it the night they burned down Georgia? Yeah,
something to that effect. Yeah.
Yes, but it was about her brother. Yeah, not her.
And Reba redid it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Night the lights went out in Georgia. The lights.
Yeah,
went out
night
in
the
Georgia.
lights went out. Yeah.
Yes, I will. I had the chorus going through my head as I'm.
Lights went out in Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually that's actually fitting with the Crucible and everything else we're talking about, because basically, the sheriff, if I remember the story in the song, because it does get kind of confusing after a minute, but basically they frame her brother for a murder that that the police actually committed, or a police officer actually committed, because his wife was sleeping around. So
yeah, damn, excuse me, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Anyway. Oh, and for those of y'all who are mentioning Eunice, I see Jerry's mentioning Eunice and Mama's Family.
Eunice was Carol Burnett.
Yes, Carol Burnett. Please, for the love of God, YouTube, go Google Tim Conway's elephant story.
Oh my God! I nearly hyperventilated
with Eunice, because Carol explained it this way. Carol said that they would do they rehearsed the script, okay, and everything was fine. They do a dry run, and Tim may ad lib a little bit, but basically it was the same show, okay, same skit. When they went live in front of the audience, all whole bars were gone. I mean, he said he would say whatever he wanted, because the whole thing was to make everybody else laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Dick Van Dyke is in that particular episode. I think he was the guest on Carol Burnett's show at that time. But I mean, he is just going on and on about the elephants at the circus and everything else. And they were Siamese twins connected trunk, and they couldn't. Oh yes, the dentist visit is amazing too, with Tim Conway and Harvey Korman. The old man.
Those two together.
Oh, when
Trying to watch Harvey Korman not laugh during the
exactly.
live, that is so
You
amazing.
find the one. I don't think it's on YouTube, because I think the YouTube Nazis took it off. But find the one with the world's oldest man at the cleaning store, and Tim Conway's coming to pick up his suit, and they got the little train running with the suits on, or the clothes on the train, and somehow Tim Conway gets himself in a suit and is running along that little thing, and here he comes, and he passes. He goes, help, as he comes around, and then Harvey Korman just loses it at that point. I mean, he could not stop laughing. So
And
anyway,
this is not really off topic, because this goes back to this is the world that we grew up in. That was comedy.
oh
Of course,
God, yeah.
you still had your Richard Pryor, your
Well,
Red
that's what
Fox.
I was getting ready to get into that right now, because after all that's over with, and they finally have the scene under control, and Carol says, "Your turn, Mama," and I think they were playing Sorry, or they were playing one of those board games. The Sorry episode's another funny one where they got to yell Sorry. But anyway, Vicki Lawrence just says in that Mama's voice, "That little asshole finally shut up," and they just lost it. I mean, of course, that didn't make the air, but the audience is roaring. Everyone's on the floor laughing. So yes, please watch that episode, because it's hilarious. It really is.
I remember sitting and watching a football game, and then the commercial came on. I was in my dad's house. I'm laying in the floor like this, watching the game. My dad's in his recliner right behind me, and an ad came on for Mama's Family, and it was her on camera, and she said, "What's all this in school today about sex education? I think they ought to learn sex education the same way that we did when we were kids, trial and error." I thought my daddy was going to turn that recliner over, and I was so embarrassed. But I have remembered that all these years.
Carol Burnett show used to come on Saturday nights at I think 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and we live for that. I mean, I would sit and watch that, and of course, once that went off the air, then it became the Love Boat and Fantasy Island and all that stuff. But
Dukes of Hazzard, Dukes of Hazzard, no, Incredible Hulk, Dukes of Hazzard, and Dallas was Friday night.
Yep. And that I mean, and the kid too. Friday night was $6 Million Man. So I had to watch that, and that was another show that I lived for, and I bought all the DVDs, because I got to relive my childhood. I mean, yeah, is it hokey? Is it cheesy? Yeah, but you know what? I love it. I loved it. So again,
that was a different time. That was I understand that we all got to grow up eventually. That's a given. Everybody, you eventually you have to become an adult. But there's something about that time when you were
I remember that joke. Do you see it?
I can't.
Okay,
I can't read it.
It's an old Monty Python joke, and it was a little one when they used to dress as women. And I think it was not Eric Idle. It was the dark-haired guy. I can't think of his name right now, but he's dressed as a woman, and he says, "What's with all this sex on the television? I mean, I keep falling off." And then they make a joke about the fact that was like the worst joke of the year. It won no awards, and they had this bent trophy, that it was submitted. That sad ass music at the end of the Hulk is called "The Lonely Man," and you can actually find that on YouTube. And Family Guy, of course, made fun of it with Stu again. Oh, play the piano. I want to do "The Lonely Man" from The Incredible Hulk. And they dun, dun, dun,
damn, you did that good, man.
Oh yeah. Well, I really don't watch much Family Guy. But I do like some of their jokes, and he does the whole,
Ask ask Anna if she would clarify what I'm speaking for myself about.
speak for yourself, Sean. I don't know what are you talking about, Anna? But yeah, I my brother and I we watched Monty Python, and we watched a lot of British television on PBS back then too. That was the late 70s,
Benny
early
Hill.
80s. Benny Hill, yeah, with that's called Yakety Sax. That
Yep.
song. And they all play by running fast. You'd always get a little bit of nudity, just enough
Yeah.
to make you
Yeah.
want to watch. It might be some girl's backside, it might be breasts, but you got to see a little bit of nudity. So, as long as nobody knew about that, that was all. Oh, growing up. Yeah. No, you get older, but you don't really grow up. Mr.
Well,
Bean. Mr. Bean. Well, I know Mr. Bean as the Black Adder. And the Black Adder was a hysterical comedy that I end up yeah, I had to play that damn Yakety song in the band. The Black Adder was a show with that actor, Rowan Atkinson, and it was 4 seasons, and he was basically reincarnated. And each time he comes back as smarter and higher up. So, like in the beginning, he's a peon or a peasant in the Dark Ages, and by the end of the 4th season, I think he is a colonel or something in World War One. And I mean, so that was a funny show too, because it was full of sarcasm, just like Faulty Towers, which I've made reference to that a few times on this show, and we watched that. Monty Python and Holy Grail. I was forbidden in grade school from quoting that film anymore, me and my friends, because we were doing it so often that people would get the teachers would get aggravated with us. They're like, we don't want to hear about African swallows anymore carrying coconuts. We don't want to hear, we don't want to hear, what is your name? What is your quest? Or, the whole, there. What, behind the rabbit? It is the rabbit. You did. You got us all worked up. I nearly saw Miyama. I was so scared. Oh, they just stopped saying that. So, Tiny Toon Adventures. Now you see, Jerry, you're getting close to my kid's age now with Tiny Toon Adventures. Yeah.
Well, to me, Rowan Atkinson was always Zazu from The Lion King.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yes, he was. For that.
Which is weird because he was up to that point he was known primarily as Mr. Bean, which was a non-speaking part.
Yeah.
And then he goes into this where all you have is his voice.
Sir, not appeared in this film. Yes. And the Moose. I had my middle daughter, watch Holy Grail with me for the first time, and I said, just pay attention to the bottom of it. Don't read the rest of that credits. Just read the bottom about the moose. And she's like, what kind of language is that? I'm like, it's supposed to be Swedish, I think. I think it's supposed to be Swedish with the zero, with the O's, with the cross through it and everything. But anyway, that also goes back to a Monty Python skit where they had the translation book, where you have one phrase in English and the other phrase means something totally different in Swede or whatever language it's supposed to be, and he's asking for the time, and he is saying things like oh God, I cannot remember the joke now, but I mean, he's just saying these off the wall stuff. But anyway, the Black Adder, we were just talking about that, Avery. But going back to the last thing, that's the part that bothered me, was the cancel culture, and that's the thing that I kind of want to get away from, and I hope that's the part I think that needs to be done away with in social media, because we can't have these witch hunts where they destroy people for having a contrary opinion. If we want to really make the world a better place, it's not protests, it's not riots, it's not legislation. It's stopping and listening to one another and willing to have an exchange of ideas.
I
And
think that you may have actually, as far as social media goes, uh, it can be fantastic. I have reestablished contact with people that I grew up with that I had convinced myself I would never ever
mhm,
again. There's a great aspect to it, but I think you were maybe not necessarily knowingly, you were a lot closer to the mark when you call it a cancer culture,
yeah,
because the thing about social media is there's no responsibility to it. You can say whatever you want to say, you can do
mhm.
whatever you want to do, and you don't have to be responsible for your actions.
Look
And
at this.
that's a very dangerous thing.
Exactly. And look at this conversation we just had about TV shows and shows that we watched growing up. Look at the interaction we had. How many people saw the same shows we saw, enjoyed the same humor we enjoyed, even though we grew up in different parts of the state, maybe even different parts of the country? That's something we have in common. And we are so focused on what makes us different that we forget about what makes us alike. And
Exactly.
I think that's the danger of the cancel culture, is that we tend to forget about the fact that, you know what, we are all Saints fans. We may have different politics, we may have different tastes in music. I'm going to be the first to tell you, most people probably think my music taste sucks. I don't care. I'm the only one's got to listen to it.
There
Well,
you
that
go.
and that and my neighbors when I crank it up outside. But anyway, I'm the guy who has to listen to this stuff. So I'm happy with it. Makes me happy. But in all my music stuff that I'm gonna have listed, I promise you, there's going to be a band, a song, an album, something in it that you love. And
Absolutely.
that's where we connect. And that's the part. I'll vote for you, Alan. No, you're not going to vote for me. uh, and Calvin's got it right too. He has a hatred. So I've debated for a long time about getting out of everything, because I've dropped out of two Saints groups because I just can't take the division anymore. Um, I can't. I'm in Twitter, but I'm not. I've been kind of staying away from it just because I can't take it, and I've been snoozing a lot of people because it's been so negative, and it's frustrating because you forget why we became friends in the first place. And I don't expect you to agree with me, and I don't expect to agree with you all the time, but it's something. We became friends because for at least a little while we had something in common, that we really liked how we were about stuff, whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's the Saints, whatever it is. And that gets lost, and it really bothers me. That's why I
Well,
just snooze and don't unfriend people.
people are conditioned these days, and I hate to put everything in such of a lumped category, but
Hmm.
it's the only way that I know how to explain it. People are being conditioned these days that, if, as I said earlier, if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong, and that offends me. We are being led to believe that being offended is acceptable rather than being understood. And like I said earlier, I think that that's a really dangerous position to have.
you know uh, People mention Looney Tunes, which I love the Looney Tunes.
I heard today, not to interrupt you, but I heard today that they're doing a reboot where they're taking
Yes.
the gun from Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam.
Um, the answer, I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but yes, that is true. EJ wants to know what's our favorite music. Um, I like, I'll be honest with
Yes,
you, I like everything from the 50s to the 80s. When it gets to the 90s and the 2000s, I'm a little more picky, but Motown, Stax, uh, hard rock, doo wop, blues, country, um,
What
horn
formulated
bands,
from what formula
everything,
what
all of it.
formulated my taste in music was probably the mid to late 70s sound, bands like Foreigner,
Mm-hmm.
Cheap Trick,
Mm-hmm.
Styx, and it progressed from there to artists like Ted Nugent with a little harder edge to it. And then came and God, I hate this term, but the hair metal genre that
Yeah, man.
exploded
Yeah.
with Rat and Motley Crue, Wasp, the Sunset Strip sound. Uh, that just that affected me in a way that I can't fully explain, and it had a lot to do with why I got into music, and I started playing music and writing music and stuff like that, and it, it's amazing to me that that probably was the last era of music that I completely embraced,
Hmm.
because when I'll be honest with you, the first time I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit," I knew it was over.
Yeah, first time I heard it too. I appreciate the Weird Al Yankovic version of and I'm yelling and I'm screaming and no one knows what I'm singing. We're so loud and incoherent. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I
Yeah.
think of when I hear this song. Smells like Nirvana. Um,
The
well,
the 80s sound was about being alive, loving life. Yeah, there was a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll involved in it, and I don't try to disclaim that in any way, shape, form, or fashion, because that was the times that were going on then.
well, the thing with the music and everyone's musical tastes are going to change. I have a theory that your musical tastes are formed pretty solidly in your teenage years. I'm talking about your high school years. Those are the songs that really stick with you. Um, and you associate memories and events with songs. You can hear songs and it reminds you, take immediately back to that time. And you that just sticks with you, so that becomes your favorite music. um Hey, I know quite a few black people that like Van Halen and White Snake and Bon Jovi and Journey, and that is
Journey, I
um,
forgot Journey. One
unfortunately
of my
that is,
very first concerts.
yeah, that's a kind of a stereotype, unfortunately, that a lot of people tend to believe, because I know black friends that go to country concerts, and you're thinking, oh, they don't go to those things, but they do. They like George Strait, they like Alabama, they like all that stuff. So it's I enjoyed meeting people who oh well, yeah, Motown, you can never go wrong, Anna, with Motown. But it's again, it's what connects people and what
Exactly.
surprises people. Music does that, and I like music that doesn't divide, that unites people across culture. You could be, this was something my I know this, you either love it or you hate it. My daughter took a class on cool, what makes things cool. And yes, I'm paying $40,000 for my daughter to take a class on cool, but she's taking other serious classes. She's a 3.8 student, so I can't question that too much. Um, but the the thing about it was, he said Michael Jackson was not cool. And of course, my daughter disagreed with him. I disagree with him. And the reason why, he said Michael Jackson wasn't cool is because Michael Jackson wasn't comfortable in his own skin. Take that for what it's worth, run with the jokes, whatever. My disagreement with him on that is, I know you're gonna lose it. And I'm sure he did mean it literally, that Michael Jackson was not comfortable with his own skin, literally.
That's not really fair because he changed it so many times.
Well, yeah. But my thing was, it made Michael Jackson, and when he thought Prince was cool, he thought Bruce Springsteen was cool, that kind of stuff. But my thing, what made Michael Jackson cool is Thriller is in a world all by itself. Okay.
Absolutely.
But Off the Wall, Bad, and his subsequent albums after Bad, you could be an inner city kid who listens to hip hop. You could be a white kid in Beverly Hills who drives a Mercedes to school every day, and you're upset because it's not a G-Wagon, which I had to look that term up. I didn't even know what the hell that was. But anyway, you could be any of those kids, and Michael Jackson appeals to you. That cross-section of diversity, what made, to me, Michael Jackson cool, because everybody watched the Thriller video. Everybody watched, knows the dance steps to, and saw the Motown special.
Moonwalk.
We did the moonwalk. Everybody saw all that. Okay. Billie Jean comes on, and that beat starts. You know what that is. Okay. And you can picture the video, all that stuff. That black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, man, woman, whatever you are, what generation, my parents, my mom liked to watch Thriller. She enjoyed watching videos, and I can tell you for a fact, when we used to watch Night Tracks on TBS back in the day, my mom's like, oh my God, what are you watching? But a Michael Jackson video came on. Oh, I like this. This is good. I like this. So all that stuff, to me, that's the cross section. Again, we'll go back to our theme of this show apparently tonight, is appealing to as many different people as possible. So I enjoyed that. I really did.
It's okay to be different from each other, but still be able, as you said earlier, it should be a lot more of recognizing that we're different, but also understanding that there are those things that make us the same.
Yeah, Chad, Night Track. And you know what I used to do? And
Friday night videos.
I used to sit there, and my brother can testify to this, because I still have the VHS tapes. He and I used to sit there, and we'd stay up till 2 and 3 in the morning, because Night Tracks came on all night on TBS back in the day, recording videos to songs that we like. And you're sitting there, it's just like no different than sitting in front of the radio with a cassette player, listening to America's Top 40, hoping to record your favorite song. But yeah, we would tape videos on MTV, Night Tracks, Friday night videos, all that stuff, just so I could rewatch these videos over and over and over again, because that was a new format to hearing these songs. And the first video I ever saw, Pop Music by M. Do you know that video?
Oh yeah.
That's the first. It wasn't
New York, London, Paris, Munich. Everybody talk about pop music.
Nope. It was TBS, Matt, Danny. It was TBS, Night Tracks. USA had.
It was on USA too.
They had Night Flight.
You're
USA.
right. You're right.
Because Night Flight, photographed by Def Leppard, was awesome. And
their video for Foolin' debuted on Friday night videos.
Yep. And Night was the first on USA, was the first time I saw the old Superman cartoons from the 40s, and they were done by the Fleischer Studios, who did Popeye. And these are, if you dig out, just type in Max Fleischer Superman, you'll know what I'm talking about, with the giant metal robots, the dinosaur, the gorilla, all these things. They were made in the 40s, and the art on this is spectacular. It's unbelievable what the art was. And useless trivia I have in my head, you know where the phrase faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, where that came from? Not the Adventures of Superman, not the TV show.
The cartoons.
Those came from that cartoon. They said those things. So yeah, that's where you get that. Now, of course, in the 50s, oh yeah, USA Up All Night. What was that chick's name? The blonde? Up All Night with who? What was her name? I can picture her. Hair teased out to the moon. I mean, huge hair.
Golly, I cannot believe I can't remember her name.
But the Adventures of Superman picked that up, that faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. The Adventures of Superman, the TV show with George Reeves, picked that up from that cartoon. So yeah, Up All Night. What was her name? I can picture her. God, hang on. We're going to Google this shit right now.
Yeah.
Okay, Up All Night USA host Rhonda. Rhonda Shear. Rhonda Shear. Up All Night with Rhonda Shear. Yep.
Yes, indeed.
God, my yeah, everybody's typing in now. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm revealing also my social life and dating life as a high schooler. That I sat and watched videos till 2 a.m. Instead of being out with girls or out in the bars or whatever, because.
And you can't forget Elvira.
Hey, man, between
Cassandra
Elvira,
Peterson.
Yes, between Elvira and watching the Playboy Channel, and this is probably why my vision screwed up, and hoping to get a little naked shot just because the picture came in just clear enough. Is that a nipple? I see a nipple. That's it. We got it. Hey, that's what it was like back in the 80s. Y'all want to know what it was like? That's what it was like. You couldn't be out, you couldn't go anywhere, so you stay up all night looking at the scrambled nudie channel, hoping to see a nipple. That was the sum total of my dating life in high school. I've come clean. That's what it is. Yeah, the fuzzy screen. Yeah. No, it wasn't fuzzy. It was
scrambled.
Scrambled. But if you left it on long enough, or at least is what you told yourself, it'll snap in just enough so there's just this one bar in the middle that's offset, and you'll be able to see it clear enough. Calvin's killing himself laughing. That is why my vision screwed up. The scrambled screen, Hey, that Morgus the Magnificent. Morgus the Magnificent, he came back. He was popular in the 60s and then 50s and 60s, and he came back in the 80s and early 90s. So yeah, that I do know who Morgus was. That was a local, that was New Orleans. That was a local horror host, just like Elvira. Cheesy ass horror films, and you cut to Morgus and Chopsley doing their goofy stuff, just like Elvira would do her stuff. Seven Ghoulie does this on USA, on MeTV. So yeah, that was the style, the genre.
Well, before we shut this thing down, I better pay the bills.
Yeah. Sean got the joke. Oh yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us tonight on Under the Dome. We love hanging out with you guys. We appreciate your understanding of what we have to say and where we stand on things, and respecting the fact that we don't necessarily see the need to stir the flames of controversy. There's no point in that. There's no way for us to win or for anybody else to win doing that.
No.
And that's really not what we're about here. Never has been and probably never will be. Um, but at any rate, you can follow us on Facebook at the Under the Dome podcast page. You can follow us on Twitter by our handles that are conveniently displayed below our names. And with that, I throw it back to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Ulrich.
Happy birthday, Jerry. Jerry will be 36 on Sunday. Everybody wish Jerry a happy birthday. I remember when I was 36. That doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but apparently it was. But
that'll be my son's birthday too.
Really? This Sunday?
Yeah, Jerry shares the birthday with my Andrew.
Yeah, all mine are either early in the year or at the end of the year. September is my daughter, my youngest daughter. August is my wife. September is my youngest daughter. November is my son. Mine's in December, and my middle daughter is February. So, yeah. This middle time, except for my mom's birthday, and that was Friday. Not Friday of last week. It's I got no birthdays in the summer. Sorry, never had a swimming party. Can't swim in December.
Or
I
January.
Yeah, I get gypped. People used to ask me all the time because my birthday is, 9 days before Christmas. And people used to ask me all the time, did you just get one present at Christmas time or did you get two? I don't know if my parents did this or not. They buy Christmas presents. Oh, we have to give him one of these things for his birthday. Here you go. So you get one early. But they tried to make it a special day for me as best it could. Once I was in high school, though, I tended to have exams every year on my birthday. So, I mean, that's just the way it fell. But anyway, once again, happy birthday, Jerry. We didn't even get into, because we got into TVs and music and everything else, we didn't get into the topic I really want to talk about. And I guess we can do this next week. I want you guys to think about this too. And y'all come back to us with some questions and statements. I want to talk about, since there's no other football, the issue, things that Saints fans think are one way that really are the other. And what I mean by that is, okay, we all think, or most the conventional wisdom about the Saints, Dome Patrol is the best defense the Saints have ever had. They were the best. And if we just had an offense, we would have won a championship with it. Well, the 2000 Saints defense was actually better than the best Dome Patrol defense. So that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about next time. Things that people assume are true. And Sean was going to bring up Archie Manning, that Archie Manning is worshipped like a god, but he really wasn't that good of a quarterback. I'm not saying that. That's Sean saying that.
Oh, thank you. It's nice under the bus.
Hey,
that is not what I said. I said
okay.
He was not as successful a quarterback as others in comparison, but yet he is revered in this city.
Well, if you asked us, the average Saints fan, to list the top 3 quarterbacks in Saints franchise history, these are the names they're going to give: Drew Brees, Archie Manning, Bobby Hebert, every time. And the reality is, Bobby Hebert wasn't very good. In fact, I wouldn't even put Bobby Hebert in my top 5 best quarterbacks in Saints history. And in your case, you're probably saying Archie Manning, yeah, he was good, but probably not as good as people really think he was. We remember more Archie of who Archie is. Yeah, I know. We got Aaron Brooks is in that list because Aaron Brooks statistically is the second best quarterback in franchise history. So, but yeah, I know y'all already starting to comment on this. We're getting you going. I want y'all to think about this for the week and come up with some other stuff like that to throw back at, Greg Williams wasn't really that great a defensive coordinator. Or, you know, if I rated offensive linemen, I probably wouldn't have Kyle Turley in any of my top 5 offensive linemen on Saints history. That kind of stuff, that's the stuff I want to talk about. Yeah, what if Jeff Blake didn't get hurt? There's a good example there. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. So that's kind of what I want to go to next week. So y'all keep that in mind. And if we start going off topic, y'all jump on me and go, hey, you said you were going to talk about this. Now y'all bullshitting about comic books, or wrestling or something like that. So let's hold our feet to the fire. We're going to talk about that next time. So Billy Joe the Great. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Heath Schuler.
All right. Oh my God! Don't even get me started. I'll just tell real quick. I know we're 5 minutes, so real quick. True story. Mike Ditka got so pissed off at Heath Schuler, he burned a timeout to get Heath Schuler off the field, sent in Billy Joe Tolliver to run one play just so Ditka had time on the sideline to chew Heath Schuler's ass out, and then he sent him back out next play. And Tolliver came back in. True story. That
Yep.
I mean that's what the Ditka years were like. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.